The Earth's history hides cataclysms that reshape not only landscapes, but civilizations themselves. One of the most enigmatic of these events is the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to glacial conditions around 12,900 years ago, which seemingly obliterated thriving human societies across the planet. While mainstream archaeology often treats this era as a dark age of survival, whispers of advanced knowledge and lost technologies suggest that some humans endured and carried secrets that defied the cataclysm. Among these secrets, the Great Pyramid of Giza emerges as a mysterious repository, not merely of funerary rites or astronomical observations, but possibly as a guardian of ancient wisdom. Could the stones of Giza be the silent witnesses of a civilization that survived global chaos, preserving knowledge through a labyrinth of symbolism, geometry, and hidden chambers? Scholars debate the timing, purpose, and construction techniques, yet hints embedded in its orientation, proportions, and surrounding structures hint at a deeper connection to a world long erased. Beyond Egypt, myths, flood stories, and oral traditions echo similar narratives of survivors who rebuilt, migrated, or concealed their knowledge. Archaeological evidence, combined with alternative interpretations of ancient texts, challenges conventional timelines, suggesting that the builders of Giza were not merely mortals of the Fourth Dynasty, but inheritors of a wisdom that predated recorded history. This investigation will explore the possibility that Giza was more than a tomb or monument. It might have been a deliberate attempt to safeguard knowledge, a beacon for future generations, and a coded message from survivors of the Younger Dryas who understood the fragility of human civilization. The world frozen in time, the Younger Dryas was not a slow decline, but a sudden and violent upheaval, a return of ice and cold that struck the planet with terrifying abruptness. Evidence from Greenland's ice cores shows a sharp temperature drop, a climate swing so extreme that entire ecosystems collapsed almost overnight. Forests that had flourished for thousands of years wilted under frost, megafauna perished, and human populations faced unprecedented challenges. Archaeological sites across North America, Europe, and the Middle East reveal abrupt shifts in habitation patterns, with people abandoning fertile valleys and migrating toward more hospitable zones. This era was a crucible, testing the resilience of societies that had begun to experiment with agriculture, animal domestication, and permanent settlements. Survivors would have needed not only ingenuity, but a profound understanding of their environment to endure, relying on knowledge that has largely disappeared from conventional records. The suddenness of the Younger Dryas forced humans to confront scarcity, climate chaos, and the fragility of survival, shaping cultures in ways that echo far beyond the archaeological record. While much of the world struggled, there is evidence that certain groups adapted with astonishing skill, creating networks of knowledge and preservation that may have outlasted the cataclysm itself. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey challenge traditional timelines, demonstrating sophisticated stonework and symbolic communication that predate what historians often consider the dawn of civilization. Some researchers suggest these constructions were more than religious centers. They may have functioned as repositories of knowledge, a way to safeguard techniques, astronomy, and spiritual understanding in a world on the brink of collapse. The sheer effort required to move and carve massive stones implies coordination, planning, and a conceptual framework that could only have emerged from a society with advanced experience, possibly inherited from an earlier, now lost epoch. These survivor groups likely encoded their understanding in ways that could survive generations, from architectural patterns to oral traditions, ensuring that even when their communities dispersed or vanished, the knowledge endured in subtle forms. The cataclysm did not respect borders, yet it left traces of resilience that historians and archaeologists are only beginning to comprehend. Across the globe, sudden disappearances of settlements, abrupt declines in megafauna, and shifts in lithic technology indicate a world in turmoil. In North America, the Clovis culture, known for its distinctive fluted spear points, collapses almost contemporaneously with the onset of the Younger Dryas, leaving behind a void that takes centuries to fill. In the Fertile Crescent, early agricultural settlements experienced a dramatic contraction, forcing populations to abandon established sites and adapt new strategies for survival. The pattern is unmistakable. Catastrophe did not erase humanity entirely, but it fractured it, creating pockets of survivors whose innovations and knowledge may have formed the foundation of civilizations that came long afterward. The possibility that some of these groups carried forward not just survival skills, but advanced understanding of astronomy, engineering, and symbolism is what draws attention to sites like Giza centuries later. Among the most compelling mysteries is the question of continuity. Could the knowledge of these survivors have traveled thousands of miles and thousands of years, eventually influencing societies far removed from the initial crisis? The Great Pyramid, with its precise alignment to cardinal points and celestial bodies, its mathematical constants, and its architectural sophistication, hints at insights far beyond what a conventional Fourth Dynasty workforce could achieve without external guidance. Ancient Egyptian chronicles are frustratingly silent on the true origins of this wisdom, recording only mythologized kings and divine inspiration. Yet patterns, proportions, and the sheer scale of construction imply an inheritance of knowledge, a codified legacy passed down through generations, perhaps originating with the survivors of the Younger Dryas. If these survivors encoded their wisdom into monuments, then Giza itself might serve as a frozen testament, a deliberate bridge between cataclysm and civilization. Even the surrounding landscape of Giza reinforces the notion of deliberate preservation. The plateau is not merely a convenient foundation, but a carefully chosen site, elevated and stable, with geological features that may have influenced construction techniques and orientation. Nearby, smaller pyramids, mastabas, and enigmatic structures form a network whose significance continues to elude archaeologists. Some theorists argue that this arrangement reflects knowledge of the stars, the Earth's cycles, and even hydrological patterns, suggesting that the architects were attempting to encode more than funerary or ceremonial data. They may have been embedding survival wisdom, instructions for agriculture, celestial observations, and spatial geometry, all preserved in stone against the decay of time and the shifting sands of memory. The idea that Giza could function as a knowledge vault becomes increasingly plausible when examined through this lens of practical as well as symbolic foresight. Oral traditions and myths from cultures worldwide reinforce the possibility that knowledge survived the Younger Dryas in fragmented but persistent forms. Stories of great floods, sky gods, and lost civilizations appear across continents, often carrying strikingly similar motifs. These myths are more than fanciful tales. They may encode memory of real events, warning of environmental upheaval, and offering guidance for rebuilding societies. Survivors may have carried these narratives across generations, transforming them into allegory and ritual that preserved essential knowledge in ways less vulnerable to destruction than written records. If we consider Giza as a physical manifestation of such an effort, it represents the apex of this knowledge preservation, a tangible, enduring record designed to withstand not just time, but the forgetting inherent in human history. The mystery deepens when we examine the pyramid's internal architecture, hidden chambers, shafts aligned to stars, and air passages that defy purely functional explanation suggest intentional design beyond burial. Some researchers propose that these spaces encode astronomical knowledge tied to long-term cycles, potentially serving as mnemonic devices for the movements of planets, the precession of the equinoxes, or other celestial phenomena critical to agriculture and timekeeping. The precision with which these features were implemented indicates a level of sophistication unlikely to have emerged spontaneously. Instead, it points toward inherited wisdom, carefully transmitted from a culture that understood both the impermanence of human life and the necessity of preserving knowledge across millennia. If Giza indeed preserves remnants of the Younger Dryas survivors, it forces a radical rethinking of chronology. The notion that humanity stumbled into civilization from a linear progression of primitive to advanced societies may be too simplistic. Instead, we might be looking at a continuum interrupted by cataclysm, where fragments of advanced understanding survived in hidden enclaves, oral traditions, and monumental architecture. The possibility that the Egyptians inherited part of this wisdom, intentionally or unconsciously, suggests a lineage of thought that bridges an almost unimaginable temporal gap. Giza becomes not only a monument to kings, but a coded archive, a bridge across an abyss of lost history, and a silent witness to survival, adaptation, and foresight. Evidence from other regions hints at a global pattern of survivor influence, reinforcing the idea that the knowledge embedded the Earth's history hides cataclysms that reshape not only landscapes but civilizations themselves. One of the most enigmatic of these events is the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to glacial conditions around 12,900 years ago, which seemingly obliterated thriving human societies across the planet. While mainstream archaeology often treats this era as a dark age of survival, whispers of advanced knowledge and lost technologies suggest that some humans endured and carried secrets that defied the cataclysm. Among these secrets, the Great Pyramid of Giza emerges as a mysterious repository, not merely of funerary rites or astronomical observations, but possibly as a guardian of ancient wisdom. Could the stones of Giza be the silent witnesses of a civilization that survived global chaos, preserving knowledge through a labyrinth of symbolism, geometry, and hidden chambers? Scholars debate the timing, purpose, and construction techniques, yet hints embedded in its orientation, proportions, and surrounding structures hint at a deeper connection to a world long erased. Beyond Egypt, myths, flood stories, and oral traditions echo similar narratives of survivors who rebuilt, migrated, or concealed their knowledge. Archaeological evidence, combined with alternative interpretations of ancient texts, challenges conventional timelines, suggesting that the builders of Giza were not merely mortals of the Fourth Dynasty, but inheritors of a wisdom that predated recorded history. This investigation will explore the possibility that Giza was more than a tomb or monument. It might have been a deliberate attempt to safeguard knowledge, a beacon for future generations, and a coded message from survivors of the Younger Dryas who understood the fragility of human civilization. The world frozen in time, the Younger Dryas was not a slow decline, but a sudden and violent upheaval, a return of ice and cold that struck the planet with terrifying abruptness. Evidence from Greenland's ice cores shows a sharp temperature drop, a climate swing so extreme that entire ecosystems collapsed almost overnight. Forests that had flourished for thousands of years wilted under frost, megafauna perished, and human populations faced unprecedented challenges. Archaeological sites across North America, Europe, and the Middle East reveal abrupt shifts in habitation patterns, with people abandoning fertile valleys and migrating toward more hospitable zones. This era was a crucible, testing the resilience of societies that had begun to experiment with agriculture, animal domestication, and permanent settlements. Survivors would have needed not only ingenuity, but a profound understanding of their environment to endure, relying on knowledge that has largely disappeared from conventional records. The suddenness of the Younger Dryas forced humans to confront scarcity, climate chaos, and the fragility of survival, shaping cultures in ways that echo far beyond the archaeological record. While much of the world struggled, there is evidence that certain groups adapted with astonishing skill, creating networks of knowledge and preservation that may have outlasted the cataclysm itself. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey challenge traditional timelines, demonstrating sophisticated stonework and symbolic communication that predate what historians often consider the dawn of civilization. Some researchers suggest these constructions were more than religious centers. They may have functioned as repositories of knowledge, a way to safeguard techniques, astronomy, and spiritual understanding in a world on the brink of collapse. The sheer effort required to move and carve massive stones implies coordination, planning, and a conceptual framework that could only have emerged from a society with advanced experience, possibly inherited from an earlier, now lost epoch. These survivor groups likely encoded their understanding in ways that could survive generations, from architectural patterns to oral traditions, ensuring that even when their communities dispersed or vanished, the knowledge endured in subtle forms. The cataclysm did not respect borders, yet it left traces of resilience that historians and archaeologists are only beginning to comprehend. Across the globe, sudden disappearances of settlements, abrupt declines in megafauna, and shifts in lithic technology indicate a world in turmoil. In North America, the Clovis culture, known for its distinctive fluted spear points, collapses almost contemporaneously with the onset of the Younger Dryas, leaving behind a void that takes centuries to fill. In the Fertile Crescent, early agricultural settlements experienced a dramatic contraction, forcing populations to abandon established sites and adapt new strategies for survival. The pattern is unmistakable. Catastrophe did not erase humanity entirely, but it fractured it, creating pockets of survivors whose innovations and knowledge may have formed the foundation of civilizations that came long afterward. The possibility that some of these groups carried forward not just survival skills, but advanced understanding of astronomy, engineering, and symbolism is what draws attention to sites like Giza centuries later. Among the most compelling mysteries is the question of continuity. Could the knowledge of these survivors have traveled thousands of miles and thousands of years, eventually influencing societies far removed from the initial crisis? The Great Pyramid, with its precise alignment to cardinal points and celestial bodies, its mathematical constants, and its architectural sophistication, hints at insights far beyond what a conventional Fourth Dynasty workforce could achieve without external guidance. Ancient Egyptian chronicles are frustratingly silent on the true origins of this wisdom, recording only mythologized kings and divine inspiration. Yet patterns, proportions, and the sheer scale of construction imply an inheritance of knowledge, a codified legacy passed down through generations, perhaps originating with the survivors of the Younger Dryas. If these survivors encoded their wisdom into monuments, then Giza itself might serve as a frozen testament, a deliberate bridge between cataclysm and civilization. Even the surrounding landscape of Giza reinforces the notion of deliberate preservation. The plateau is not merely a convenient foundation, but a carefully chosen site, elevated and stable, with geological features that may have influenced construction techniques and orientation. Nearby, smaller pyramids, mastabas, and enigmatic structures form a network whose significance continues to elude archaeologists. Some theorists argue that this arrangement reflects knowledge of the stars, the Earth's cycles, and even hydrological patterns, suggesting that the architects were attempting to encode more than funerary or ceremonial data. They may have been embedding survival wisdom, instructions for agriculture, celestial observations, and spatial geometry, all preserved in stone against the decay of time and the shifting sands of memory. The idea that Giza could function as a knowledge vault becomes increasingly plausible when examined through this lens of practical as well as symbolic foresight. Oral traditions and myths from cultures worldwide reinforce the possibility that knowledge survived the Younger Dryas in fragmented but persistent forms. Stories of great floods, sky gods, and lost civilizations appear across continents, often carrying strikingly similar motifs. These myths are more than fanciful tales. They may encode memory of real events, warning of environmental upheaval, and offering guidance for rebuilding societies. Survivors may have carried these narratives across generations, transforming them into allegory and ritual that preserved essential knowledge in ways less vulnerable to destruction than written records. If we consider Giza as a physical manifestation of such an effort, it represents the apex of this knowledge preservation, a tangible, enduring record designed to withstand not just time, but the forgetting inherent in human history. The mystery deepens when we examine the pyramid's internal architecture. Hidden chambers, shafts aligned to stars, and air passages that defy purely functional explanation suggest intentional design beyond burial. Some researchers propose that these spaces encode astronomical knowledge tied to long-term cycles, potentially serving as mnemonic devices for the movements of planets, the precession of the equinoxes, or other celestial phenomena critical to agriculture and timekeeping. The precision with which these features were implemented indicates a level of sophistication unlikely to have emerged spontaneously. Instead, it points toward inherited wisdom, carefully transmitted from a culture that understood both the impermanence of human life and the necessity of preserving knowledge across millennia. If Giza indeed preserves remnants of the Younger Dryas survivors, it forces a radical rethinking of chronology. The notion that humanity stumbled into civilization from a linear progression of primitive to advanced societies may be too simplistic. Instead, we might be looking at a continuum interrupted by cataclysm, where fragments of advanced understanding survived in hidden enclaves, oral traditions, and monumental architecture. The possibility that the Egyptians inherited part of this wisdom, intentionally or unconsciously, suggests a lineage of thought that bridges an almost unimaginable temporal gap. Giza becomes not only a monument to kings but a coded archive, a bridge across an abyss of lost history, and a silent witness to survival, adaptation, and foresight. Evidence from other regions hints at a global pattern of survivor influence, reinforcing the idea that the knowledge embedded in Giza was part of a larger network. Sites like Sumer, the Indus Valley, and Mesoamerican ceremonial centers reveal advanced engineering, precise alignments, and symbolic systems that defy simplistic explanations based on isolated invention. If these developments were seeded, even indirectly, by groups who survived the Younger Dryas, then the Great Pyramid could be understood as both a culmination and a transmission point of this ancient knowledge. It is as if humanity, having been tested by catastrophe, encoded its hard-won wisdom into enduring monuments, ensuring that even after great losses, the seeds of civilization could sprout anew. The implications extend beyond archaeology into philosophy and anthropology. If knowledge can survive through symbols, architecture, and oral tradition across thousands of years, then the conventional view of human progress requires reconsideration. Survival was not merely physical but intellectual, a testament to the capacity of humans to protect, transmit, and interpret complex information in extreme circumstances. The Giza Plateau may be the most visible expression of this effort, a carefully orchestrated repository that communicates with those who are willing to decipher its language of stone, proportion, and cosmic alignment. It stands as a reminder that the past is not lost, only hidden, waiting for those perceptive enough to recognize the traces of what came before. Whispered knowledge and ancient architects. The survivors of the Younger Dryas were not merely people clinging to life. They were witnesses to catastrophe, inheritors of knowledge forged through necessity and foresight. In a world abruptly frozen and then destabilized, those who endured understood patterns invisible to most, the subtle interplay between climate, celestial cycles, and human survival. When these groups eventually migrated toward the Nile Valley, they carried more than memory. They carried a framework for understanding the world that could be translated into practical applications. Agriculture, irrigation, and settlement planning all benefited from a comprehension of seasonal cycles, soil fertility, and hydrology that went beyond trial and error. This knowledge, when combined with symbolic thinking and the emerging hierarchies of early Egyptian society, could have formed the foundation of a civilization uniquely positioned to thrive where others faltered. The Nile, with its predictable flooding and fertile banks, provided a natural laboratory for these transplanted insights. The survivors may have recognized the potential of this river valley to sustain dense populations, yet it required careful observation and timing to harness effectively. Early irrigation systems, while seemingly rudimentary, reveal an understanding of seasonal rhythms and soil management that may trace back to survivors' experiences elsewhere. This expertise, when passed to local populations, could accelerate societal development, compressing centuries of trial into a few generations. The transmission of knowledge was not merely technical. It included a worldview shaped by survival, encoded in rituals, symbols, and stories that would become the bedrock of Egyptian mythology. Egyptian mythology itself may hold hidden traces of this legacy. The pantheon of gods associated with the sun, the sky, and the waters can be seen as allegories of cosmic and environmental knowledge preserved from a lost era. Deities such as Ra, Osiris, and Thoth may represent not only divine figures but archetypes of human understanding, a symbolic map for interpreting the universe, life, and death. Rituals surrounding agriculture, seasonal festivals, and celestial observation often mirror principles that would have been critical for surviving the Younger Dryas, suggesting that the myths were more than religious or cultural expressions. They were encoded instructions. The survivors, aware of the fragility of knowledge in a chaotic world, may have used myth and architecture as complementary strategies to preserve essential wisdom. Giza itself emerges as a focal point where this knowledge crystallizes. The alignment of the pyramids with cardinal points, the orientation of shafts towards specific stars, and the proportions that mirror mathematical constants suggest intentionality far beyond symbolic decoration. These features may serve as a repository of the survivors' understanding of geometry, astronomy, and measurement. By embedding knowledge into massive, immovable stone, they ensured that their insights could survive centuries of human forgetfulness, environmental change, and political upheaval. The construction techniques, the precise quarrying, and the transportation of immense blocks point to a level of organization and foresight that implies a continuity of expertise, possibly inherited from a pre-Younger Dryas tradition of monumental construction. Evidence from other early Egyptian sites reinforces the idea of cultural inheritance. Tool marks, artistic conventions, and construction methods display patterns that appear consistent across centuries, suggesting a deliberate transmission of knowledge rather than independent invention. Even hieroglyphics, emerging in the same period, may encode deeper meanings than historians have traditionally acknowledged. These symbols could represent a dual function, recording events for practical purposes while simultaneously preserving abstract or esoteric knowledge carried from the survivors' earlier experiences. In this context, the Egyptian civilization becomes less an isolated invention and more a carefully cultivated continuation of a deeper human legacy, one that survived catastrophe and sought to ensure the future of knowledge. Technological aspects of early Egypt also hint at survivor influence. Copper working, precise stone cutting, and the organization of labor for massive construction projects all require knowledge beyond immediate necessity. While traditional accounts attribute these achievements to ingenuity developed in situ, the sudden sophistication of certain techniques raises questions. Could the survivors have introduced methods refined over centuries elsewhere, suddenly appearing in the Nile Valley as if by transmission of memory and skill? If so, the pyramids are not only tombs or ceremonial sites, they are monuments to the persistence of human understanding, standing as physical proof that survival does not merely mean living, but mastering and encoding the lessons of catastrophe. The intellectual legacy of the survivors may also explain anomalies in Egyptian chronology. Gaps, sudden leaps in knowledge, and architectural sophistication often puzzle scholars, appearing too advanced for the historical context in which they arise. When viewed through the lens of transmitted survivor knowledge, these anomalies take on new meaning. They suggest a bridging of epochs where pre-existing expertise is applied in a new context, adapted to local conditions while maintaining core principles. The Giza Plateau, in this view, is a deliberate manifestation of that bridge, a fusion of inherited knowledge and emerging civilization, crafted to endure the forgetfulness of human generations. Even the symbolic layout of the necropolis hints at deeper intentionality. The pyramids, mastabas, and smaller structures form alignments and ratios that echo astronomical cycles and possibly even geophysical phenomena. Scholars have debated the purpose of these arrangements for centuries, often reducing them to religious or ceremonial functions. However, if the builders were influenced by survivors of a global catastrophe, the layout could represent a multifaceted knowledge system. Each alignment, each proportional relationship, may serve as both instruction and memorial, a way to encode observations of the sky, the earth, and human society for generations that may not otherwise have access to oral or written tradition. The persistence of ritual practices further suggests the imprint of survivor wisdom. Festivals tied to the inundation of the Nile, ceremonies celebrating celestial events, and precise timing for planting and harvesting all indicate a sophisticated understanding of natural cycles. These practices, deeply intertwined with religious observance, ensure the survival of practical knowledge under the guise of cultural continuity. The survivors may have recognized the power of embedding critical survival information within ritual, a form of knowledge preservation that could withstand political upheaval, social change, and the inevitable decay of memory. The pyramids, therefore, become both symbolic and functional, monuments that encode essential principles for sustaining civilization in a world prone to sudden disruption. Across the broader landscape of early Egypt, echoes of this survivor influence are visible in artistic motifs, architectural repetition, and the careful recording of astronomical phenomena. Whether in the orientation of temples, the depiction of constellations, or the recurring patterns of sacred geometry, one can trace a thread of continuity that suggests deliberate preservation of insight. This legacy transcends the individual achievements of pharaohs or architects, pointing instead to a deeper inheritance, a lineage of thought that predates recorded history and may reach back into the cataclysm of the Younger Dryas. Giza, therefore, stands not only as a monument to kings, but as a silent testament to the survivors who ensured that knowledge, once nearly lost, would endure. Secrets etched in stone. The Great Pyramid of Giza is more than a marvel of engineering. It is a silent codex, a three-dimensional manuscript written in stone, designed to outlast the fragility of human memory and the erosion of time. Every aspect of its construction, the orientation, the proportions, the alignment with celestial bodies, suggests a deliberate attempt to encode knowledge that could be read only by those attuned to its hidden language. Scholars have long marveled at its near-perfect alignment with true north, an achievement that would challenge even modern surveyors without contemporary instruments. Yet when viewed through the lens of the Younger Dryas survivors, this alignment is not a mere technical feat. It is a signal, a way to preserve an understanding of astronomy and geography, critical for survival in a world where celestial patterns dictate agricultural cycles, navigation, and seasonal planning. The builders may have understood not only the practical applications of such precision, but also the symbolic power of encoding a stable cosmic order into a monument, ensuring that their knowledge could endure long after the original culture had transformed or disappeared. The internal geometry of the pyramid is equally compelling, revealing ratios and constants that have fascinated mathematicians and theorists for centuries. The relationship between the pyramid's height and base suggests an understanding of the mathematical constant pi, while the slope angles hint at knowledge of the golden ratio, both appearing in a structure that predates written records of such concepts in Egypt. Some researchers propose that these features are accidental, the byproduct of aesthetic preference or engineering convenience. Yet the possibility that they are deliberate encodings of knowledge inherited from survivors of a cataclysmic era is tantalizing. If true, the Great Pyramid is not merely a tomb or a ceremonial structure, but a physical repository of advanced mathematical, astronomical, and architectural wisdom, deliberately designed to communicate with future generations who could decipher its hidden language. Each measurement, each proportion, becomes a line of encoded instruction, a bridge connecting the lost knowledge of a devastated world to the rising civilization of ancient Egypt. The shafts within the pyramid add another layer of cryptic sophistication. Some of these passageways, long believed to serve purely symbolic or ritual functions, are aligned with specific stars and constellations, including Sirius and Orion's belt, which held immense significance in Egyptian cosmology. The choice of stars may not have been arbitrary. Their positions in the sky could function as temporal markers, guiding agricultural cycles or marking celestial events critical to societal planning. From the perspective of the Younger Dryas survivors, the ability to encode time and celestial knowledge into a permanent structure would have been invaluable, preserving their understanding of the heavens even as the world changed unpredictably. These shafts, narrow and precise, demonstrate a mastery of spatial and astronomical observation, embedding survival information into architecture in a way that transcends written language and literal interpretation. Beyond the pyramid itself, the surrounding necropolis forms a network of structures that reinforce and extend this hidden knowledge. Smaller pyramids, mastabas, and causeways appear arranged according to complex geometrical patterns, possibly reflecting astronomical cycles or harmonic ratios. Some theorists suggest that the layout mirrors constellations or even represents a scaled map of the Nile Valley, encoded with practical and symbolic meaning. If the builders inherited knowledge from survivors of the Younger Dryas, these patterns could represent instructions for urban planning, water management, and community organization, preserved in a form immune to loss over generations. The physical positioning of each structure, the orientation of entrances, and the relationships between monuments collectively form a three-dimensional codex, a deliberate mnemonic device that transforms architecture into a repository of survival wisdom. Mathematical precision is only one aspect of this encoded knowledge. The very selection of the Giza plateau may reflect geophysical understanding passed down from survivors. The plateau's elevation, its bedrock stability, and its proximity to the Nile suggest not only practical construction considerations, but also a keen awareness of geological and hydrological principles. Survivors who had experienced catastrophic floods and climate instability would recognize the importance of selecting stable ground and harnessing water resources effectively. By situating the pyramid complex on such a site, the builders may have been preserving knowledge of environmental planning, ensuring that critical insights survived in a durable physical form. The monument thus serves a dual purpose: recording cosmological knowledge above ground while embedding terrestrial and ecological understanding within the very stones of its foundation. Symbolism and measurement converge in ways that hint at encoded messages for those capable of decoding them. Certain chambers within the pyramid, such as the king's chamber, appear to incorporate proportions that correspond to units of measurement consistent with the human body, the Earth's dimensions, and celestial cycles. The idea that these ratios are accidental strains credulity when viewed against the precision of construction and the sophistication of associated monuments. For the survivors of the Younger Dryas, embedding knowledge in proportional relationships would ensure that critical lessons about scale, distance, and time could survive even if conventional language or documentation were lost. Every corridor, every chamber, every block potentially carries information about how to understand the cosmos, manage resources, and construct enduring structures, a multidimensional instruction manual frozen in stone. Even the air shafts exacting alignment may serve as temporal markers beyond simple star pointing. Modern studies suggest that these conduits could have functioned as sightlines, allowing observers to track the precession of the equinoxes over centuries, or to mark significant astronomical events that influence agriculture and seasonal planning. If the survivors encoded such knowledge, they may have anticipated future generations of humans who would need to understand celestial patterns without access to prior records. The pyramid thus becomes a time-bridging monument, preserving observational astronomy and practical survival knowledge together, a testament to foresight and meticulous planning that challenges conventional assumptions about early Egyptian capabilities. The precision and scale of construction also suggest an understanding of workforce management, logistics, and engineering that would be essential to applying survivor knowledge in a new civilization. Moving and placing massive limestone and granite blocks requires not only physical effort, but careful organization, understanding of leverage, and planning over decades. Such feats hint at accumulated wisdom, possibly inherited from an earlier, now lost epoch, refined through generations of experimentation and survival in extreme conditions. The very act of building the pyramid could have been a method of encoding procedural knowledge, a practical demonstration of principles of physics, geometry, and material science embedded in labor, instruction, and monument alike. In this way, the pyramid itself becomes a teaching tool as much as a repository, instructing future generations through action, scale, and permanence. The combination of mathematics, astronomy, geology, and symbolic encoding suggests that Giza was more than a local endeavor. It was part of a long-term survival strategy. The survivors of the Younger Dryas, having endured climate catastrophe and societal collapse, may have understood the necessity of creating enduring archives of critical knowledge, ensuring that essential information would remain accessible to future civilizations. Giza, in this light, represents the apex of such a strategy, a deliberate, multi-layered effort to preserve not only architectural grandeur, but the lessons of survival, environmental mastery, and cosmic awareness. Each stone, alignment, and proportion becomes a testament to human resilience and the extraordinary lengths to which those who survived a frozen world went to protect knowledge that might otherwise have been lost forever. Rituals of memory and the stars. Ancient Egyptian ritual was not merely ceremonial, it was a complex system of encoded knowledge, a living repository where survivors of global catastrophe may have embedded practical understanding in symbolic form. From the earliest dynasties, priests and scribes carefully choreographed ceremonies that marked astronomical events, seasonal cycles, and environmental patterns essential to agriculture and societal stability. Festivals celebrating the inundation of the Nile, the appearance of Sirius, or the alignment of constellations were more than religious observances. They were systematic recordings of environmental intelligence, ensuring that communities could thrive despite the unpredictability of nature. The repetition of ritual created a durable memory system, a way to encode survival knowledge in performance, myth, and collective attention. If Younger Dryas survivors had passed through the region, it is plausible that they recognized the fragility of written records and deliberately used ritual as a medium to preserve critical wisdom across centuries. The mythological framework of Egypt provides further insight into this encoded knowledge. Deities associated with the sun, the sky, and the underworld often represent cycles of death, renewal, and cosmic order, but beneath the surface lies practical guidance for survival. Ra's daily journey across the sky mirrors the necessity of tracking solar patterns for agricultural planning, while Osiris's death and resurrection can be interpreted as an allegory for cyclical environmental change, warning communities to prepare for periods of scarcity and abundance. Thoth, the god of writing, mathematics, and measurement, embodies the principles of recording knowledge accurately and systematically, perhaps a symbolic tribute to the survivors who understood that knowledge itself could outlive empires. In these stories, abstract cosmology intersects with practical instruction, offering encoded survival strategies to those who knew how to interpret the layers of myth. Astronomy played a central role in ritualized knowledge preservation. The Egyptians observed the movements of stars, planets, and the moon, not simply for divination, but for practical purposes, timing planting cycles, predicting floods, and aligning structures to celestial markers. Constellations like Orion, closely associated with Osiris, may have served as mnemonic devices, reminding priests and leaders of the timing necessary to maintain societal stability. The orientation of temples, tombs, and pyramids toward these stars suggests that knowledge of the heavens was preserved in both symbolic and functional forms. For survivors of the Younger Dryas, who had endured sudden climate shifts and catastrophic events, embedding this information in ritual and architecture ensured that future generations would retain the tools to survive environmental upheaval even without written records. The interplay between ritual and architecture further reinforces the notion of deliberate preservation. Ceremonial spaces were often designed to align precisely with solar and stellar events, creating environments where observation became a lived practice. During festivals and sacred ceremonies, participants would witness the interplay of light and shadow, the alignment of sunbeams within temple sanctuaries, or the rising of key stars along constructed sightlines. These physical experiences codified essential knowledge in human memory and societal practice, ensuring that critical insights about celestial and environmental patterns were not lost to time. The synchronization of ritual and architecture functions as a dynamic archive, one that speaks directly to human perception and experience, preserving lessons in both mind and monument. Ritual also encoded environmental awareness and resource management. Ceremonies celebrating the Nile's flood, for instance, reflect detailed observation of hydrological cycles and soil fertility patterns, providing instruction on when and where to plant crops. The timing, songs, and offerings were not arbitrary. They functioned as a structured calendar of action, combining memory, observation, and tradition. For a society inheriting knowledge from the Younger Dryas survivors, this ensured that critical environmental intelligence would persist, even if literacy or written records were incomplete. The integration of survival knowledge into performative and spiritual practices represents a sophisticated strategy, preserving data in a form that could be transmitted orally and experientially across generations, resistant to the disruptions of social upheaval or political change. The symbolic dimensions of Egyptian ritual extend into funerary practices as well. Tombs, sarcophagi, and burial chambers were designed to reflect cosmic order and cycles of regeneration, encoding lessons about life, death, and continuity. The rituals surrounding burial were not solely concerned with honoring the dead, but also with teaching the living how to navigate the cycles of existence, environmental change, and cosmic influence. The precision of tomb placement, alignment with cardinal directions, and incorporation of symbolic motifs all point to a desire to encode knowledge in physical and performative form. If Younger Dryas survivors influence these practices, they may have been embedding centuries of environmental observation, survival strategy, and astronomical knowledge into structures that would outlast the memory of individual communities. Even the Egyptian calendar reflects encoded wisdom that may trace back to catastrophic experience. Divided into seasons directly corresponding to the Nile's behavior, with months linked to stellar appearances, it served as a comprehensive guide to agricultural and social planning. The calendar demonstrates that the Egyptians were not merely recording arbitrary time periods, but were observing the rhythms of the environment, possibly drawing upon insights preserved by survivors who understood the consequences of misjudging seasonal pattern. Knowledge of the flood cycle, lunar phases, and stellar positions was critical for ensuring the survival of crops and communities, and its integration into ritual and mythology ensured its transmission beyond individual lifespans. In this sense, ritual and astronomical observation become twin pillars of a knowledge system designed to withstand both temporal and environmental disruption. The continuity of ritual across centuries highlights the deliberate nature of knowledge preservation. Even as dynasties rose and fell, core ceremonies endured, suggesting an understanding that certain practices carried essential information for survival and societal coherence. The repetition of these rituals created layers of institutional memory, encoding both practical and symbolic knowledge in ways that ordinary records could not achieve. For the descendants or inheritors of Younger Dryas survivors, this continuity ensured that the wisdom of a fragile, catastrophe-prone world remained accessible, guiding the development of agriculture, urban organization, and cultural cohesion across millennia. Ritual thus functions not merely as tradition, but as a deliberate archival method, a living library encoded in performance, architecture, and cosmology. The integration of ritual, mythology, and architecture suggests a comprehensive strategy for safeguarding civilization. Knowledge was not stored in one place or form, but distributed across multiple channels, ensuring redundancy and resilience. Stone monuments recorded mathematical, astronomical, and structural insights, while ritual encoded environmental and practical knowledge, and myth preserved symbolic interpretation and ethical frameworks. This multidimensional approach mirrors the adaptive strategies one would expect from a society that had survived global catastrophe, recognizing that knowledge is most secure when embedded in multiple facets of human experience. Giza, with its pyramids, temples, and ritualized spaces, embodies this strategy in monumental form, serving as both a beacon and a repository for wisdom, inherited from a world forever altered by the Younger Dryas. Hidden chambers and lost knowledge. Beneath the massive stones of the Great Pyramid, hidden spaces and secret passages whisper of knowledge deliberately concealed from casual observers, designed to withstand the erosion of centuries. The pyramid's internal architecture is far more than a series of chambers for burial or ceremonial use. It is a carefully orchestrated network, each corridor and shaft potentially encoding principles of mathematics, astronomy, and cosmic order. Explorations with modern technology, from muon tomography to 3D scanning, have revealed voids previously unknown, suggesting that the pyramid may contain more than meets the eye, hidden chambers waiting to divulge their secrets. If the builders inherited knowledge from survivors of the Younger Dryas, these spaces could represent intentional vaults of intellectual and practical understanding, protected from the randomness of history, natural decay, and human interference. The so-called King's Chamber, constructed from massive granite blocks, is itself an enigma. The precision of its construction, combined with its location deep within the pyramid, suggests that it was designed to endure enormous pressure, both physical and symbolic. Scholars debate whether the chamber served purely as a burial space, yet its dimensions, proportions, and internal acoustics hint at additional functions. The granite walls may have been chosen for their stability and resonance, possibly to amplify sound or vibration in ways that correspond to energy flow, astronomical alignment, or ritual practice. If we consider the knowledge of Younger Dryas survivors, who would have experienced catastrophic environmental shifts and understood the value of preserving information, it is conceivable that these chambers were designed to safeguard encoded wisdom in a form that could be read by future generations attuned to their signals. Beyond the king's chamber, the enigmatic shafts that extend through the pyramid continue to confound researchers. Originally dismissed as symbolic or ventilation features, these narrow corridors have precise alignments with significant stars, including Sirius and Orion's belt, suggesting a connection to long-term celestial observation. The possibility arises that the builders were encoding knowledge about precession, stellar cycles, and time measurement, creating a permanent astronomical record within the stone. The shaft's meticulous angles, carved with tools whose precision would challenge modern engineers, imply deliberate design rather than coincidence. From the perspective of Younger Dryas survivors, embedding observational and predictive knowledge in stone would be a logical strategy to preserve critical insights against the potential collapse of society or the loss of written records. Recent discoveries of previously unknown voids and cavities have further fueled speculation about the pyramid's hidden content. Muon scans reveal spaces large enough to hold chambers or corridors, raising questions about what might lie undisturbed for millennia. These voids could contain encoded knowledge in the form of inscriptions, symbolic arrangements, or even mechanical devices, though their exact purpose remains speculative. If the pyramid's builders inherited advanced understanding from a civilization that survived the Younger Dryas, these hidden areas may have served as a repository for knowledge deemed too important, too fragile, or too sacred to leave exposed. In this context, Giza functions not only as a monument to kings, but as a time capsule, a durable archive storing intelligence meant to survive the unpredictability of human history. The idea that the pyramid could contain lost technologies is bolstered by the sophistication of its construction methods. The precise quarrying, transport, and placement of massive blocks demonstrate an understanding of leverage, weight distribution, and structural dynamics that remains astonishing even today. Some researchers propose alternative theories, suggesting that methods now lost may have relied on techniques transmitted from survivors of a prior age, refined over centuries. These techniques could include advanced knowledge of geometry, mechanical principles, or energy flow, deliberately encoded into the construction process. The pyramid, in this view, becomes a multi-dimensional instruction manual, teaching through both physical form and hidden spaces how to manipulate materials, align with celestial events, and design enduring structures. Artifacts and symbolic motifs within Giza's complex reinforce the notion of preserved wisdom. Though the interior contains relatively few objects compared to other tombs, the symbolic carvings, the proportions of passages, and the placement of chambers suggest intentional messaging. Each design decision may encode instructions or observations about the natural world, celestial patterns, or societal organization. If Younger Dryas survivors had participated in shaping this knowledge, they would have understood that encoding practical, astronomical, and engineering insights in a monument ensured survivability of wisdom, even if human memory or culture faltered. The pyramid itself, therefore, becomes a layered archive, its visible and hidden features communicating across time in a language of stone, proportion, and alignment. The surrounding structures, including smaller pyramids, mastabas, and causeways, form an integrated network, that amplifies the hidden knowledge contained within the Great Pyramid. The precise arrangement and proportional relationships of these monuments suggest a comprehensive understanding of geometry and cosmic symbolism. Some researchers note correlations between the pyramids and specific star patterns, raising the possibility that the necropolis as a whole functions as a mapped representation of celestial or terrestrial principles. From the perspective of survival-oriented knowledge preservation, the complex could serve as both a guide for practical activity and a symbolic instruction set for future generations, ensuring that critical wisdom about the cosmos, the earth, and human society could endure intact. Speculation about mechanical devices or lost technology within the hidden chambers further underscores the pyramid's potential role as a repository of advanced knowledge. Ancient accounts, combined with modern theoretical models, suggest that the Egyptians may have experimented with tools or methods now forgotten, potentially derived from knowledge transmitted by survivors of a global catastrophe. These innovations might include principles of leverage, acoustics, energy transfer, or structural mechanics embedded within the pyramid itself. Even if physical devices are no longer present, the architecture may encode procedures and formulas, preserving an understanding of mechanical and structural principles within the stone. In this sense, the Great Pyramid transcends its role as a monument, functioning as a classroom and archive designed to communicate complex knowledge across millennia. The Great Pyramid's enduring presence underscores the success of this knowledge preservation strategy. Surviving millennia of environmental change, political upheaval, and human curiosity, it continues to speak, silently yet powerfully, to those willing to decipher its codes. Hidden chambers, shafts, and proportional relationships suggest a deliberate effort to encode knowledge beyond the reach of ordinary observers, a legacy perhaps inherited from the survivors of the Younger Dryas. If this hypothesis is correct, Giza was not constructed merely to honor kings or gods, but to protect the wisdom of a world that had already faced annihilation, ensuring that future generations might survive where previous civilizations had been nearly extinguished. The pyramid, therefore, becomes both a monument to the past and a bridge to the future, a testament to foresight, resilience, and the extraordinary lengths humanity will go to preserve what is most vital. Echoes across the ancient world, the influence of Younger Dryas survivors may not have been confined to Egypt. Evidence from around the globe suggests a subtle but persistent transmission of knowledge, often encoded in mythology, monumental architecture, and sophisticated early technologies. Civilizations separated by thousands of miles and centuries share striking similarities that hint at a common inheritance or shared cultural memory. From the megalithic temples of Malta to the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the precision of construction, alignment with celestial bodies, and symbolic motifs suggest that certain fundamental principles of knowledge survived the cataclysm and were deliberately transmitted. While mainstream scholarship often treats these developments as independent inventions, the patterns emerging across continents point toward a continuity of insight, one that may have its roots in the survivors of the Younger Dryas, who carried both practical and esoteric wisdom through a fractured world. In the Americas, archaeological evidence reveals advanced understanding long before the civilizations that later flourished there. Sites such as Carol in Peru and Teotihuacan in Mexico demonstrate sophisticated urban planning, precise orientation, and monumental construction that echo principles visible in Egypt. The recurring themes of astronomical alignment and geometrical precision suggest a common approach to encoding critical knowledge, possibly reflecting shared strategies for survival and societal organization. Stories passed down by indigenous peoples often contain motifs of floods, star-guided navigation, and lost wisdom, mirroring narratives from Mesopotamia and Egypt. Such parallels raise the possibility that the knowledge carried by Younger Dryas survivors spread widely, influencing emerging civilizations in multiple regions, either directly through migration or indirectly through cultural diffusion. Across the Fertile Crescent, Sumerian and later Mesopotamian texts preserve myths of catastrophic floods, divine instruction, and the preservation of knowledge through select individuals. These narratives bear striking resemblance to flood legends elsewhere, suggesting a collective memory of global catastrophe. Architectural achievements, such as ziggurats and observatories, reflect precise engineering and astronomical observation, hinting at advanced understanding that may predate conventional historical timelines. If Younger Dryas survivors carried insights into celestial patterns, environmental cycles, and structural design, these societies could have inherited and adapted that knowledge, embedding it into their own cultural and technological frameworks. The transmission of wisdom across such distances underscores the resilience and adaptability of knowledge when encoded in ritual, architecture, and symbolism. Even in distant regions, such as Southeast Asia and the Pacific, echoes of shared understanding appear. Megalithic structures in Indonesia and the Philippines reveal sophisticated stonework and alignment with celestial or environmental markers, while oral traditions tell of great floods, migrations, and hidden knowledge passed from elders to youth. These motifs suggest that the strategies employed by Younger Dryas survivors, embedding essential survival knowledge in ritual, architecture, and storytelling, were replicated across diverse environments and cultures. The similarities across continents challenge the assumption that each society developed complex knowledge in isolation, implying instead that there existed a broader network of inherited wisdom preserved across generations despite environmental upheaval and societal collapse. Myths from multiple civilizations further strengthen this hypothesis. Stories of world-ending floods, fire from the sky, and ancestral heroes who survived global disasters appear with uncanny similarity from Mesopotamia to the Americas, from India to the Mediterranean. These narratives may not be literal accounts, but encode practical knowledge and societal lessons learned from catastrophic events. For survivors of the Younger Dryas, transforming environmental observation and survival strategies into allegory and myth would ensure that crucial insights remained accessible even to populations generations removed from the original events. In this context, Giza represents a tangible anchor for these widespread cultural threads, a physical manifestation of knowledge preservation in a world where oral, symbolic, and ritualistic transmission was essential. Trade routes and migration patterns provide another vector for the spread of survivor knowledge. Archaeological evidence shows the exchange of tools, raw materials, and cultural practices across regions long before formalized civilizations emerged. Through these networks, the principles of geometry, astronomy, and construction could travel alongside goods carried by survivors or their descendants. These exchanges would not merely transmit technology, but also methods of encoding knowledge in architecture, ritual, and art, allowing distant civilizations to replicate insights without direct observation of the original environment or catastrophe. In this sense, Giza and similar monumental sites function as both repositories and templates, providing practical and symbolic frameworks for societies scattered across the globe. The alignment of ancient structures to celestial phenomena further supports the idea of shared knowledge. Pyramids in Egypt, ziggurats in Mesopotamia, and megalithic observatories in Europe all exhibit precise orientation towards stars, solstices, or equinoxes, indicating a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. These alignments were not merely ceremonial, they provided calendars for agriculture, markers for navigation, and tools for predicting environmental changes. Survivors of the Younger Dryas would have recognized the value of encoding such knowledge into enduring structures, ensuring that successive generations could survive and prosper even in the absence of written documentation. The convergence of these practices across continents suggests a common strategy for preserving, and transmitting essential knowledge across time and space. Even symbols and numerology reflect potential shared heritage. Recurring motifs, geometric ratios, and mathematical patterns appear in distant cultures, often integrated into religious or ceremonial contexts. These repetitions imply a codified system of knowledge that transcends language, geography, and time. If such systems were derived from survivors of a global catastrophe, they represent an attempt to safeguard critical understanding in forms resistant to loss, whether through myth, ritual, or monumental design. Giza, with its precision, symbolic alignment, and enduring presence, becomes a focal point within this network, a tangible embodiment of principles that may have guided civilizations across the ancient world. The global footprint of these influences suggests a deliberate, long-term strategy for knowledge preservation. The survivors of the Younger Dryas, having witnessed the fragility of human society and the destructive potential of environmental catastrophe, may have understood that survival required more than adaptation. It required deliberate encoding of intelligence into enduring forms. Monuments, rituals, myths, and aligned structures across continents may collectively represent this strategy, with Giza serving as one of the most prominent and sophisticated examples. The shared principles evident worldwide point to a continuity of human knowledge that bridges cataclysm and civilization, offering a tantalizing glimpse into the extraordinary foresight and resilience of those who endured one of the most profound disruptions in Earth's history. Messages carved in eternity. The Great Pyramid and its surrounding complexes are not only repositories of practical knowledge, but also vessels for esoteric wisdom, intended to communicate principles about the universe, life, and the survival of human consciousness across millennia. The symbolic language of architecture, aligned precisely with celestial bodies and incorporating mathematical ratios, suggests that the builders encoded lessons about harmony, order, and cosmic cycles into stone itself. For survivors of the Younger Dryas, who witnessed how quickly civilizations could collapse under environmental upheaval, preserving knowledge in enduring and multi-layered forms would have been a necessity. This esoteric layer of Giza goes beyond calendars or agriculture. It speaks to human understanding itself, offering guidance for future generations on how to perceive and navigate the world, both materially and spiritually. The spiritual symbolism of the pyramid reflects a profound understanding of cycles of death and rebirth, decay and renewal, chaos and order. The shape of the pyramid, converging from a broad base to a single apex, mirrors the movement from physical multiplicity to a unified point of energy, a principle visible in nature, celestial mechanics, and human consciousness. Some theorists suggest that this design encodes knowledge about energy, vibration, and resonance, subtly teaching that the structure of the universe mirrors the structure of human understanding. For those inheriting wisdom from Younger Dryas survivors, embedding these lessons into sacred architecture ensured that even the intangible principles guiding survival, such as awareness of natural cycles and interconnectedness, were preserved alongside the concrete and practical knowledge necessary for daily life. The chambers and corridors of the pyramid may themselves represent stages of understanding, a progressive journey from the external to the internal, from the observable world to hidden truths. The Queen's Chamber, the King's Chamber, and the enigmatic Grand Gallery form a sequence that could be interpreted as an initiatory path, where each space conveys information about proportion, balance, and cosmic order. Sound and light interact within these spaces in ways that may have been intended to teach, warn, or inspire. For Younger Dryas survivors, whose existence was shaped by the fragility of life and the suddenness of environmental catastrophe, embedding lessons in experiential form would ensure retention. Knowledge communicated not only through reading or observation, but through perception, memory, and intuition. Astronomical alignment continues to play a key role in these esoteric messages. Shafts pointing towards specific stars may serve as more than calendars. They could function as guides for meditation, reflection, or consciousness expansion, linking human awareness with the cosmos. Stars associated with deities, such as Sirius and Orion, may not simply denote religious reverence, but encode observations essential to understanding the cycles that govern both celestial and terrestrial systems. The survivors of the Younger Dryas, having experienced planetary upheaval, may have recognized the importance of connecting spiritual and empirical knowledge, embedding these dual lessons into monuments that could guide future generations both materially and metaphysically. The symbolism of numbers and ratios within the pyramid amplifies this esoteric communication. Pi, the golden ratio, and other constants encoded in the dimensions and proportions suggest an understanding of universal patterns, reflecting a worldview that sees mathematics not merely as a tool for calculation, but as a language of cosmic order. By embedding these constants into architecture, the builders ensured that the knowledge could survive abstractly, even if its practical application was forgotten. Younger Dryas survivors, aware of the impermanence of societies and the necessity of preserving insight, may have deliberately encoded these constants into monuments as enduring lessons about harmony, proportion, and the structure of reality itself. Sacred geometry, evident throughout the pyramid and surrounding complex, further suggests the intention to communicate esoteric knowledge. Triangles, squares, and other geometric forms are not only structural elements, but symbolic representations of balance, stability, and energy flow. For a culture shaped by catastrophic survival, understanding and preserving such principles would have been critical. They provide both physical stability in construction and conceptual stability in worldview. Each geometric relationship may encode a principle about observation, measurement, or environmental awareness, blending practical survival strategies with metaphysical insight, ensuring that the knowledge remained comprehensible to those who could perceive its layered meanings. The necropolis, surrounding the pyramid, with its smaller pyramids, mastabas, and temples, may collectively form a symbolic map of the cosmos, reflecting cycles, alignments, and patterns visible both in the heavens and on Earth. This integration suggests a holistic approach to knowledge preservation, where practical, spiritual, and esoteric lessons coexist, reinforcing one another. For survivors of the Younger Dryas, such a system would serve multiple purposes. It would guide daily life, encode strategies for surviving environmental challenges, and transmit principles of universal order and interconnectedness. Giza, in this sense, is a multidimensional archive, simultaneously functional, symbolic, and philosophical. Even the positioning of the Great Sphinx in relation to the pyramids may carry layered meaning. Traditionally associated with guardianship and cosmic wisdom, the Sphinx could represent the preservation of conscious memory and vigilance, a symbolic sentinel of knowledge. For Younger Dryas survivors, ensuring that knowledge persisted required more than physical monuments. It required embedding moral, philosophical, and spiritual cues into the landscape. The Sphinx, with its human and leonine features, may encode lessons about adaptability, observation, and the balance of intellect and instinct, acting as a silent guide for future generations, navigating both environmental and societal challenges. Giza may serve as a message intended for the distant future, for civilizations far removed from the original builders. The combination of architecture, alignment, proportion, and symbolic design communicates principles of survival, observation, and cosmic awareness, accessible not only to contemporary humans, but to those capable of interpreting the subtle, layered messages preserved in stone. For survivors of the Younger Dryas, who had witnessed the fragility of human knowledge firsthand, creating monuments that endure through time and communicate wisdom across generations was a profound act of foresight. Giza, in this light, is both a repository and a beacon, a bridge connecting the catastrophe of the past with the potential for survival, understanding, and enlightenment in the future. Enduring mysteries and modern revelations. The Great Pyramid and its surrounding plateau continue to confound scientists, archaeologists, and explorers, presenting anomalies that suggest a depth of knowledge far beyond what conventional history allows. Despite centuries of excavation and study, the precision, scale, and alignment of the pyramids remain unmatched, raising questions about the methods, purpose, and origin of the builders' knowledge. Modern technologies, from laser scanning to muon imaging, have revealed hidden voids and chambers, gaps in our understanding that hint at untapped knowledge. If the pyramid encodes the wisdom of survivors from the Younger Dryas, then these unexplained spaces may represent intentional preservation of information, areas where practical, astronomical, and esoteric insights were deliberately hidden, accessible only to those who could interpret their purpose and meaning. The mystery of Giza endures because it was designed to endure, a deliberate act of foresight against the decay of time and memory. Anomalies extend beyond hidden chambers to the very construction of the pyramid itself. The accuracy of stone cutting, some blocks weighing dozens of tons, the seamless joints between them, and the flawless alignment to cardinal directions remain technologically astonishing, even for modern engineers. Traditional explanations attribute this to vast labor, ingenuity, and simple tools. Yet the scale and precision suggest knowledge that may have been inherited, refined, and transmitted over generations. Younger Dryas survivors, having witnessed societal collapse and environmental upheaval, would have understood the value of encoding lessons in enduring, observable form. The pyramid's construction, therefore, may not merely reflect human skill, but the deliberate preservation of knowledge and techniques meant to survive catastrophe and inspire future civilizations. Beyond engineering, Giza presents astronomical mysteries that continue to intrigue researchers. Alignments with Orion's belt, Sirius, and other celestial bodies suggest a level of observational astronomy that implies centuries of accumulated knowledge. The purpose of these alignments may have been multifold: to serve as calendars, to track precession, and to encode information about cosmic cycles critical to agriculture and survival. If we consider the influence of Younger Dryas survivors, these alignments may have been part of a deliberate strategy to encode environmental and astronomical wisdom in a form that would persist regardless of social upheaval or generational loss of memory. The plateau becomes not just a site of human achievement, but a map of the heavens, designed to guide observers across millennia. Modern interpretations of the pyramid continue to provoke debate, with some researchers suggesting that energy, acoustics, or resonance may play a role in its hidden functions. Certain chambers exhibit unusual acoustic properties, and shafts appear to channel vibrations in ways that are still not fully understood. Whether these effects are intentional or coincidental remains a question, yet their existence adds another layer of intrigue. For survivors of the Younger Dryas, embedding knowledge about energy, resonance, or natural phenomena into stone would be a logical extension of a survival strategy, ensuring that essential insights could be rediscovered by perceptive future generations. Each anomaly, each unexplained feature, potentially represents a fragment of knowledge preserved in a durable and subtle form. The surrounding landscape adds additional mysteries. Smaller pyramids, mastabas, and temples form precise geometric patterns that may encode celestial or environmental information. Causeways and roads align with features of the Nile and other natural landmarks, suggesting advanced understanding of geography, hydrology, and urban planning. When examined collectively, the complex becomes a multidimensional archive, preserving not only technical knowledge, but cultural, symbolic, and environmental wisdom. If Younger Dryas survivors influence this arrangement, the design reflects a deliberate attempt to encode knowledge in a way that is both visible and symbolic, ensuring that essential insights endure beyond the lifespan of any single generation. The plateau also holds signs of knowledge lost to time. Tools, inscriptions, and artifacts provide tantalizing glimpses into construction techniques and societal organization, yet gaps remain that resist explanation. Some researchers have proposed that parts of the pyramid's design may encode mathematical principles, astronomical observations, or geophysical insights that have no direct parallel in the historical record. If so, these gaps are not accidental. They may represent a deliberate safeguarding of knowledge, accessible only to those trained to interpret its subtle cues. In this light, Giza can be seen as both a monument and a puzzle, a structure whose mysteries were encoded intentionally by individuals who understood the fragility of civilization and the importance of preserving wisdom. The global resonance of Giza adds to its enigmatic aura. Comparisons with other ancient sites, such as megalithic structures in Europe, ziggurats in Mesopotamia, and pyramids in Mesoamerica, reveal recurring architectural principles, alignment patterns, and symbolic motifs. These parallels suggest that Giza may have been part of a broader network of transmitted knowledge, preserved through survivors of the Younger Dryas and diffused across continents. The similarities between distant sites, in terms of geometry, orientation, and ritual purpose, imply a continuity of understanding that transcends individual civilizations, hinting at an underlying logic shared across space and time. Modern technology continues to uncover new questions as it reveals hidden voids, cavities, and structural anomalies within the pyramid. These discoveries suggest that the builders intended certain knowledge to remain concealed, accessible only to those who understood the encoded principles. Such hidden areas could contain instructions, symbolic representations, or experiential designs intended to teach critical lessons about astronomy, mathematics, or cosmology. From the perspective of Younger Dryas survivors, hiding knowledge in plain sight, yet accessible only to the perceptive, would be a sophisticated method of ensuring its survival in a world prone to chaos and forgetfulness. Giza challenges our understanding of human history, knowledge transmission, and the ingenuity of early civilizations. The site endures as a bridge between the catastrophic past of the Younger Dryas and the rise of human civilization, preserving lessons about survival, observation, and cosmic order. Its mysteries invite speculation, but also demonstrate that human foresight and resilience can transcend time, embedding wisdom in enduring monuments capable of guiding generations far beyond their creator's own lifespan. The Great Pyramid remains a silent sentinel, a repository of hidden knowledge, and a testament to the extraordinary lengths humanity will go to preserve what it understands as vital, connecting the distant past to a future that is still unfolding. The unfinished codex, even after centuries of study, Giza continues to defy complete understanding, hinting at knowledge and wisdom that remain just out of reach. Modern exploration, using advanced scanning technology, ground-penetrating radar, and 3D imaging, has revealed hidden voids, structural anomalies, and subtle alignments that suggest the Great Pyramid is far more than a tomb or ceremonial site. Each discovery raises more questions than it answers, as if the monument itself were a living codex, deliberately leaving portions unreadable until humanity reaches a certain level of understanding. The Younger Dryas survivors, having endured extreme global disruption, may have recognized the necessity of embedding knowledge in this way, accessible yet challenging, ensuring that only those capable of observation, reasoning, and interpretation could unlock the deepest secrets. Giza, in this sense, functions not merely as a relic of the past, but as a bridge to the future, a teaching monument designed to evolve in meaning as human comprehension grows. The pyramid's hidden chambers remain among the greatest enigmas. Muon tomography and other non-invasive scans suggest the existence of previously unknown cavities, some of considerable size, whose purpose is unclear. Speculation ranges from storage of sacred objects to spaces designed for acoustic or vibrational experiments, and perhaps even repositories of mathematical, astronomical, or cosmological knowledge. For survivors of the Younger Dryas, deliberately concealing information within physical spaces would have been a method of safeguarding critical insight against the vagaries of time, natural disaster, and human interference. These hidden voids serve as a reminder that knowledge preservation was a central concern, and that the monument itself was meant to be interactive, requiring discovery and interpretation rather than passive observation. Environmental and astronomical alignment continues to yield puzzling revelations. The Great Pyramid, along with its satellite structures, aligns not only with cardinal points, but with key stars and celestial events, encoding information about precession, seasonal cycles, and the motion of the heavens. Some alignments are precise to fractions of a degree, far exceeding what conventional tools could achieve according to mainstream historical timelines. This precision suggests that the architects possessed advanced observational skills, possibly inherited from survivors of the Younger Dryas, who had witnessed dramatic environmental shifts and understood the need to track celestial patterns for survival. The pyramid, therefore, may contain layers of knowledge about time, cycles, and cosmic order, preserved in alignment and proportion for future generations to decode. The interplay between symbolic representation and practical instruction also remains a tantalizing mystery. Hieroglyphs, geometric ratios, and architectural forms may serve multiple functions, encoding environmental knowledge, astronomical data, and philosophical principles simultaneously. The pyramid's design allows information to be interpreted at multiple levels, accessible to those seeking technical instruction as well as those attuned to spiritual or symbolic meaning. The Younger Dryas survivors, having experienced sudden societal collapse, may have understood that survival depended not only on physical adaptation, but on the transmission of ethical, philosophical, and observational insight. Giza thus functions as a multi-layered archive, preserving the intellectual, spiritual, and practical lessons of a near-forgotten civilization in ways that challenge modern assumptions about human history. Artifacts and inscriptions in the surrounding complex continue to spark debate. While some objects suggest advanced construction techniques, mathematical understanding, and ritual practices, gaps remain that defy explanation. Certain hieroglyphs, symbolic carvings, or unusual alignments may encode knowledge that cannot yet be deciphered, pointing to a deliberate obfuscation or the preservation of partial information. Younger Dryas survivors may have intended this ambiguity, recognizing that certain knowledge must be earned or discovered through careful study, rather than being handed over unexamined. In this way, Giza operates not only as a static repository, but as an active, evolving educational system designed to cultivate observation, reasoning, and insight across generations. The broader plateau hints at connections to even larger networks of knowledge. Causeways, smaller pyramids, mastabas, and satellite temples appear arranged in a coherent, possibly symbolic or astronomical pattern, suggesting a holistic plan that extends beyond individual structures. Each element interacts with others to convey multiple layers of information, from environmental observation to ritualized instruction, celestial mapping, and symbolic encoding. This complexity may reflect a deliberate attempt by survivors of the Younger Dryas to create an enduring archive of human knowledge, one that could guide future civilizations in both practical and philosophical ways. The plateau becomes an open-air classroom, a three-dimensional repository of insight, challenging modern observers to uncover its logic and purpose. The mysteries of energy and resonance further complicate our understanding. Certain chambers exhibit unusual acoustic properties, and shafts appear to channel sound and vibration in ways that remain poorly understood. Hypotheses range from ritualistic purposes to structural or energy-based functions, yet none have been conclusively proven. If intentional, these features could encode knowledge about natural forces, sound propagation, or even principles of physics that were understood by earlier, lost civilizations. Such features suggest that the pyramid was not only a repository of practical knowledge, but also a laboratory for experimentation, teaching, and preservation of insights too subtle or advanced to record in conventional form. The Younger Dryas survivors, aware of the fragility of knowledge, may have deliberately embedded these lessons in ways that challenge discovery, ensuring that understanding requires both observation and intellect. Even today, Giza continues to inspire reinterpretation and discovery. New technologies, combined with interdisciplinary approaches, reveal patterns, anomalies, and possibilities that previous generations could not perceive. The monument's endurance through millennia highlights its role as a safeguard of knowledge, capable of speaking across time to those who seek to understand its codes. The message is clear. Knowledge can survive catastrophe if it is carefully preserved, encoded, and structured to endure. The pyramid's mysteries remain unresolved, reminding humanity that discovery is ongoing and that the lessons of survival, observation, and wisdom are never fully exhausted. In this way, Giza remains unfinished, a living codex designed to challenge, educate, and inspire as long as humans remain curious and perceptive. The plateau invites us to consider our own role in the preservation of knowledge. If Younger Dryas survivors were able to encode wisdom that survived millennia, the responsibility now falls on modern humanity to continue this chain, safeguarding understanding against environmental, societal, and technological disruption. Giza stands as both a monument and a mirror, reflecting not only the ingenuity of its builders, but also the potential of those who encounter it to think critically, observe carefully, and preserve wisely. The pyramid's unanswered questions are not failures, but opportunities, offering a challenge to engage with the past deeply, extract lessons for the future, and recognize that knowledge, once nearly lost, can be deliberately safeguarded to illuminate the path forward. Unlocking the future from the past. Giza is more than a monument to human achievement. It is a repository of knowledge that may hold insights crucial to the survival and advancement of modern civilization. Every hidden chamber, shaft, and alignment raises the possibility that lost technologies and advanced understanding lie encoded within its design, waiting for humanity to rediscover them. The Younger Dryas survivors, having endured a world of abrupt climate change and societal collapse, recognized that the future depended on the careful preservation of practical, philosophical, and technological wisdom. Their foresight suggests that the Great Pyramid was constructed not merely to honor kings or gods, but to serve as a durable archive, a bridge between epochs, containing knowledge that could guide civilizations that may face similar existential challenges. The hidden chambers and voids, recently revealed by muon tomography and other advanced scanning techniques, are more than architectural curiosities. They may represent the intentional storage of knowledge, preserved in forms resistant to decay, loss, or misunderstanding. If these spaces contain tools, symbolic instructions, or encoded mathematical and astronomical principles, rediscovering and interpreting them could revolutionize our understanding of ancient engineering, energy, and environmental awareness. The challenge is not merely technical, it is intellectual. Younger Dryas survivors seem to have anticipated the difficulty of interpretation, embedding lessons in a way that requires careful observation, reasoning, and perhaps even a shift in perception to fully grasp. Giza, in this sense, functions as a teaching monument, waiting for humanity to rise to the level of understanding required to unlock its secrets. The alignment of the pyramids and surrounding structures to celestial bodies provides a framework for interpreting time, cycles, and energy in ways that modern society is only beginning to explore. Ancient engineers encoded astronomical observations with such precision that they could serve as long-term calendars, guides for environmental prediction, and tools for synchronization with natural cycles. Today, as humanity faces environmental instability, these lessons are strikingly relevant. The Younger Dryas survivors likely understood that survival requires not only immediate adaptation, but the ability to anticipate long-term patterns, to integrate observation into strategy. Rediscovering and applying this knowledge could inform modern approaches to climate resilience, urban planning, and the sustainable use of natural resources, bridging ancient insight with contemporary necessity. Moreover, the esoteric and symbolic dimensions of Giza suggest that knowledge preservation is as much about consciousness and perception as it is about physical structures. Chambers designed to resonate with sound, shafts aligned to specific stars, and geometric ratios embedded in construction all indicate that understanding requires engagement on multiple levels: analytical, sensory, and intuitive. For modern humans, this implies that the lessons of the past are not only technical, but philosophical. They invite reflection on the interconnectedness of life, the importance of observing natural and cosmic patterns, and the need to harmonize human activity with larger environmental and celestial rhythms. In this way, Giza continues to teach, offering insight not only into survival, but into the cultivation of wisdom and awareness that supports enduring civilization. The potential for rediscovering lost technologies is another compelling implication of Giza's design. The precision of construction, the seamless placement of massive stones, and the complex internal architecture suggest methods that remain elusive to contemporary engineering. Whether these techniques involve mechanical innovations, energy manipulation, or principles of material science, they reflect knowledge that could inform modern design and construction. The Younger Dryas survivors appear to have recognized that knowledge, once nearly lost, must be embedded in durable, comprehensible forms. Today, exploring these possibilities challenges modern researchers to think creatively, combining empirical investigation with interdisciplinary approaches to decode ancient wisdom. The pyramid becomes not just a relic, but a roadmap to innovation. The global resonance of Giza's design also points to the potential for interconnected understanding. Similar structures, alignments, and symbolic motifs found in distant cultures suggest that principles preserved at Giza may have parallels worldwide. Rediscovering these shared insights could facilitate a deeper understanding of ancient civilizations, their approaches to survival, and the ways they encoded knowledge for posterity. The Younger Dryas survivors' foresight extends beyond local preservation. It implies an awareness of knowledge as a universal asset to be protected and transmitted across generations and geographies. Modern humanity can learn from this approach, recognizing that collaboration, shared insight, and preservation of critical knowledge are essential for survival in an increasingly complex and interdependent world. The hidden, symbolic, and practical knowledge encoded at Giza also invites reflection on humanity's responsibility to safeguard knowledge today. If ancient civilizations could anticipate catastrophe and preserve wisdom for millennia, modern society must similarly recognize the fragility of its knowledge systems. Digital storage, global networks, and institutional archives are powerful, but they are not immune to failure. Giza reminds us that the preservation of understanding requires redundancy, accessibility, and the embedding of knowledge in multiple forms, physical, cultural, and symbolic. The ancient monuments encourage a mindset that prioritizes foresight, resilience, and the anticipation of long-term challenges, ensuring that essential insights survive even in the face of upheaval. Giza challenges humanity to balance curiosity with humility. The mysteries of hidden chambers, lost technologies, and symbolic alignment suggest that not all knowledge is immediately accessible. The Younger Dryas survivors appear to have deliberately preserved certain insights in ways that require effort, observation, and comprehension. In doing so, they ensured that knowledge is not merely possessed, but earned through engagement, reflection, and study. This principle resonates profoundly today. True understanding requires patience, discipline, and respect for the complexity of both the natural world and human ingenuity. Giza remains unfinished in this sense, a living archive, a teacher across time, inviting humanity to rise to the challenge of interpreting, applying, and safeguarding knowledge for generations yet to come. Wisdom preserved beyond time. Giza stands as a bridge between catastrophe and civilization, a silent testament to the extraordinary foresight of those who survived the Younger Dryas and ensured that their knowledge would endure. The lessons embedded within its stones are not only technical or astronomical, but philosophical, challenging us to consider the fragility of human civilization and the importance of preserving wisdom. Every shaft, chamber, and alignment carries the echoes of minds who understood that survival was more than mere adaptation. It required deliberate planning, observation, and the foresight to encode knowledge in forms that could outlast generations. In a modern context, these ancient architects remind us that insight is only as valuable as its ability to persist and guide others, urging humanity to think beyond short-term achievements and consider the legacy we leave for the future. The Great Pyramid's proportions, celestial alignments, and hidden chambers suggest that survival knowledge was encoded in a multi-dimensional manner, integrating mathematics, astronomy, and symbolic instruction. For contemporary society, this offers a compelling lesson. Knowledge is most secure when preserved in multiple forms, accessible both to those who understand the practical mechanics and those who interpret its symbolic or philosophical layers. The Younger Dryas survivors understood the precariousness of human memory and the unpredictability of the natural world. Their approach to encoding wisdom demonstrates the necessity of resilience, adaptability, and redundancy in safeguarding essential knowledge. By studying the ways in which Giza preserves insight, modern civilization can appreciate the value of redundancy in information, of embedding understanding in multiple dimensions, physical, symbolic, and cultural, to ensure that vital knowledge survives disruption. The integration of ritual, astronomy, and architecture at Giza provides another crucial lesson: that knowledge is most enduring when it connects to human perception, experience, and imagination. Ceremonial practices, mythological symbolism, and architectural precision all work together to make abstract concepts tangible and memorable. For survivors of global catastrophe, embedding survival principles in such layered forms ensured that future generations could grasp critical lessons even if direct observation of past events was impossible. Today, this suggests that education, communication, and societal planning must account for human cognition, culture, and memory, finding ways to preserve knowledge not merely as abstract data, but as lived experience, narrative, and symbolic resonance. The possibility of hidden chambers, lost technology, and unexplained anomalies further challenges us to consider the limits of human understanding. The Younger Dryas survivors appear to have anticipated that knowledge could be lost, misunderstood, or ignored, and they built redundancies and cryptic encodings into their monuments to counteract this vulnerability. Modern technology, from scanning to data analysis, allows us to glimpse these hidden systems, but the process is slow, complex, and often incomplete. This teaches a profound lesson about humility and patience, that understanding the full breadth of human knowledge, especially knowledge preserved under extreme foresight, requires time, care, and reverence for complexity. The ancients remind us that wisdom is rarely fully revealed in a single generation, and that survival often depends on our ability to interpret, adapt, and preserve knowledge across centuries. The global resonance of Giza and similar ancient sites highlights another essential implication. Knowledge is not merely local, it is universal. The shared principles observed across continents, geometric alignment, astronomical observation, and symbolic encoding, suggest a continuity of insight that transcends culture and geography. Younger Dryas survivors appear to have recognized that some knowledge is so critical that it must survive beyond any single society or political structure. For modern humanity, this underscores the importance of cross-cultural communication, collaboration, and the recognition that survival and advancement require shared understanding. Lessons from the past, encoded in stone, ritual, and myth, call for a collective responsibility to protect, interpret, and expand knowledge for the benefit of all human societies. Giza also reminds us of the interplay between practical survival and higher understanding. The pyramid encodes information about architecture, astronomy, and agriculture, yet it simultaneously communicates philosophical and spiritual principles about cosmic order, proportion, and interconnectedness. The Younger Dryas survivors understood that survival was not merely a matter of tools or resources, but also of comprehension, the ability to perceive patterns, anticipate change, and integrate knowledge across domains. This insight is as relevant today as it was millennia ago. Human societies continue to face complex, interconnected challenges: climate change, technological disruption, and environmental fragility that require a holistic understanding, similar to what the ancients encoded in Giza. The monument serves as a reminder that survival depends on both practical mastery and conceptual insight. The enduring mysteries and anomalies of Giza also teach a lesson about curiosity and intellectual humility. The fact that so much remains unknown, the purpose of hidden chambers, the methods of construction, the precise meanings of symbolic alignments, illustrates that even extraordinary civilizations leave unanswered questions. Younger Dryas survivors appear to have intentionally embedded partial knowledge, accessible only to those capable of careful observation and reasoning, suggesting that the preservation of wisdom is an active, interpretive process. Modern humanity is called to approach such mysteries with rigor, patience, and openness, understanding that discovery is often incremental and that the most profound knowledge may require us to integrate empirical observation with symbolic, philosophical, and historical interpretation. The story of Giza and its connection to the Younger Dryas survivors emphasizes foresight, resilience, and the long view of human survival. These ancient architects recognized that the world could change dramatically, that knowledge could vanish, and that the lessons of one generation must be encoded in forms durable enough to endure environmental and societal upheaval. For us today, this serves as both inspiration and warning. The fragility of civilization demands that we preserve knowledge, prepare for uncertainty, and encode understanding in forms that endure. Giza stands as a timeless teacher, a bridge across epochs, and a silent message from those who survived the depths of catastrophe, reminding humanity that wisdom, once nearly lost, can be deliberately safeguarded to guide the future.